Welcome to It Happened in Grand Prairie, as we bring you the history of our city and some of the people that are important in that history making. And some of them are making history even today. This is our history tape number 427, and we're just so excited today. We have representative of a very special organization in our city that have been very important to us in documenting not only their history, but the history of Grand Prairie and the history of our nation. And we're so pleased today to welcome, first of all, a very special young lady, a retired school teacher, and that she's going to be one of the most important people in the DAR pretty soon, because in a few years she'll get to be our regent. And Jean Peel, we are so glad to welcome you to the set, my dear.
Well, thank you very much, Ruthie.
Yes,
I appreciate
yes,
that. I'm glad to be here.
Yes, and along with her, an illustrious lady that wears many hats, but is also affiliated with the DAR, and that's Miss Jo Robertson Campbell. And Jo, we want to welcome you to the set, honey.
Thank you, Ruthie.
Yes, yes. And y'all are going to be my ambassadors today to help us document some of the history of the DAR as we know it in Grand Prairie, Texas. And Jo, if you'd like to rest with me for a few minutes, we're going to put Jean on the hot seat. Is that okay?
That's wonderful.
She's going to look out into her camera and tell us about the DAR, NASDAR, and tell us what all of that means, and tell us about some of the beginnings of your organization, and then we'll get into what motivated you to become a part of it.
The National Society Daughters of the American Revolution was begun in 1890, and our chapter here in Grand Prairie, the Texas Bluebonnet chapter, was founded in 1968.
Okay.
And at the present time, I think we have 3 living charter members.
How wonderful.
One of them is Mary Caswell Sinclair, Ruby Gilpin, and though she doesn't live here in town,
yes,
Evan Cotton, who I believe lives in West Texas. I'm sorry, I can't tell you the
But you
exact
still
amount.
have 3 charter members?
We still have 3 charter members.
Oh, that's wonderful.
Of this society. It was, there were about 18 who founded the chapter, and it has grown considerably with the help of many members who worked hard. This past year, we lost 2 of those hard-working members when, well, 3 really, when Verna Waddell passed away, and Ruth Blue and Jean Rowe.
Yes.
They were all very instrumental in the growth of the society.
What is the DAR?
Well, the Daughters of the American Revolution was founded to help preserve our historic heritage,
yes,
and to encourage education and to promote all patriotic endeavors.
Especially from the American Revolution on?
Yes, from the American Revolution.
Okay.
Any woman 18 years or older may make application if she can show lineage back to a patriot in the Revolutionary War. And the patriot doesn't necessarily have to be someone who fought in a battle. Yes. It can be someone who provided supplies for the army.
Yes.
It can be someone who worked in the
munitions factory.
Yeah, the early the government, yes, the colonial government,
yes,
of it. So there are many ways to be considered patriots, but they have to be able to trace their ancestry back to that revolutionary time.
Then they make an application?
Yes, they make applications. The application must be signed by 2 present DAR active members. And then those papers are all sent to the national office in Washington, D.C., and are studied by genealogists there,
yes,
and approved by a board, and
given a number.
And they're given a number if they find that this is true. And in order to prove your lineage, some people have the luck, as I did, of having a distant relative who met my brother, and that we found out we were related. She was a DAR member, and she had written a book about our family
Your
and an ancestor.
How wonderful!
And so in getting that, in that book, my brother and I were actually listed, and my father, because it was through my father's lineage. Yeah. So all I had to do was prove that my father descended from this ancestor, and we did that with death certificates.
I see.
For my father, for my grandfather, great-grandfather,
and on back.
And we went back to where we could hook them up, so to speak,
yes.
As being related. And so I was very fortunate. Ruth Blue was a history teacher at Lee Middle School, and I was a speech teacher there.
Yeah.
And when she found out that I had this book, I was showing it to her one day, yeah, because I had just received it, and she said, "Well, I know all about your ancestor, and we'll just get you in the DAR." So, although I hadn't really thought about it too much, yes, it kind of excited me at the time, and she helped me a great deal. But other people have to do a little more searching, and they may have to do, as Joe said, that was done with her ancestry, was going back and what do you call it, where you rub the tombstone, yes, markings, yes, you know, as proof of, yes, that you have an ancestor was there
in your lineage.
And it takes some people quite a while, but it gets very interesting as you seek out the genealogy of your family and uncover ancestors you didn't know you had.
How often do you meet, and where do you meet for the local DAR?
All right, our local chapter is now meeting at the Senior Citizen Center. Good. For many years, we met in the Trimble Room, yes, which was a part of the original Grand Prairie Memorial Library, yes, on Main Street, yeah, and still remained a meeting room even after the new library was built, and yes, the Parks and Recreation Department took it over. But last summer, they had to put us out, or give us another location to yes, meet, because they turned that area and needed it for office space. So we're now meeting at the Senior Citizens Center on Conover Street.
What are some of the worthwhile projects that you all have done as the DAR? I know that we have one Grand Prairie significant landmark that y'all are responsible for, but and tell us about that, because that was one of the most exciting ones that you've had.
Well, yes, that happened before I became a member, but I've done a little research and study on it, and that was the Liberty Bell project that the DAR kind of spurred on with the help of the school children in the town.
Yes.
And every September, I was trying to think what it was, for the last 10 years, I think it's been, the DAR has had a project called Bells Across America.
Yes.
And we've done that at the Liberty Bell.
Oh, good. And that gave you a wonderful meeting place, didn't it?
It was on September 17th. You were supposed to do it on September 17th, which is the date of the birth of the Constitution of the United States. And so it's our honoring the birth of the Constitution with the Bells Across America.
Okay. Now, that's one of the projects. What are some of the other things y'all do? Do you do research, or do you have, what are your meetings about?
Well, we have different areas of program. For instance, as I said, we seek patriotic endeavors, and so we've had programs on the flag of the United States, and we've had programs, right now we're in the midst of a 50-year commemoration of the Korean War.
I see.
And this past April we had a Korean War veteran, Watson Crumby, come to us and speak to us about the Battle of the Chosin Reservoir, where the American troops at the beginning of the Korean War were surrounded by the Chinese.
Yes.
And it was a very moving program because he
brought you there, didn't he?
He really did. He made it very real and alive to us, and we had great respect for him. We hope that the library has offered us some space in July, and we're planning to have a display about the Korean War in the library. And he has offered us his part of his uniform or something like that. And then he had two old newspapers that he made copies of for me with headlines concerning
that's wonderful.
the war and the battles of it.
That'll help you document it for the library.
Oh yes, yes,
yes.
And so we hope to do that. But we've been trying to follow along the events. The Korean War was kind of the forgotten war.
Yes.
It got stuck in between the World War II and then the Vietnam War. Yes. But it was
real, wasn't it?
It was real, and there were a lot of casualties, and it was very difficult.
Now, I know that you mentioned that the DAR is going to host an important state regent or something.
Yes. Our state regent, Mrs. John Ramp of Canadian.
Canadian
Excuse me, I got the Canadian Texas. Will be here on February 9th of 2002. This is the first time, when I first became a DAR in 1977, I think it was, we had the state regent at that time, who was from College Station, Mrs. Wayne D. Tyner. She came to one of our meetings, but this time we're planning something really special because we hope to be able to have a luncheon, and Mrs. Ramp will speak to us.
Who is your current regent?
Our current regent is Mrs. Billy Ray Thomas, B, as she's fondly known. She lives in Granbury, but she drives back and forth and does all the things that a regent's supposed to do. She, to my knowledge, is on a trip right now with a prospective member who is searching out tombstones.
Yes. Well, so you as the vice regent, it's very appropriate for you to be here today
thank you.
when she's out doing tombstones, right?
I didn't anticipate being able to substitute for her in this way, but she was going to go on a trip with one of our prospective members to help her with her genealogy.
And I believe there's a celebration coming up for June the 14th.
Yes, our Flag Day celebration will be at the Copeland home at 10 a.m. Jan Barrett, who's also a member of our chapter, is sort of ramrodding it. And we're also at that time not only going to have the flag ceremony and all, but we're planning to bury a time capsule.
How wonderful.
If you remember, last July, we uncovered a time capsule that had been buried 25 years before, or 20 years before, and found it in kind of sad condition.
You know, it was deteriorated just terribly, wasn't it?
I mean, that was a lot of gook that I brought out of that thing. There were some things that were preserved, but it was not as well preserved as we would like. So
you're going to try again?
Yeah, Jan's working on getting that so that it will be water sealed. And we decided, rather than putting it was buried by the Liberty Bell, but we decided to put it in some area there by the Copeland home.
Which is our historic site.
That's our historic site there.
Yes, it is.
And they won't accidentally add something onto the City Hall and cover it up.
That is true. That is true. That could happen very well.
You never know how things are going to be changed. But that was a big occasion last year. The city helped us with it. We had refreshments.
A big ceremony.
Oh, it was. And we had, some people came because their grandson's birth announcement was in the newspaper that they'd buried. The paper was in terrible shape, but I gave it to them so that they could go dry it out and
resurrect it.
And they could find it. And I'm trying to think, there was something else that was in there. I found out later, after I contacted my daughter, who lives in Memphis now, that she and her husband were Mr. and Miss Chick.
Yes.
And there, she said, "Oh, Mother, our picture was in that
paper."
paper."
It was.
And I said, "Well, you wouldn't have known it by the looks of it now." But
we hope you kept a copy of that announcement in your own archive.
well, I hope I have it too. But
yes. Going through all that.
going through all that to find it, I don't remember if I do or not. But.
Okay. Well, with your permission, I'm going to let you rest a minute.
Thank you.
and let's talk with Miss Jo. Yeah. Thank you for that update of the history of what we call the Grand Prairie DAR, but your chapter is for a little bit more than just Grand Prairie, Texas. And
yes,
so
we have members from
other places. Miss Jo.
Yes, ma'am.
Tell me about your experience in the DAR. Why did you become a member of that when you're a member of Soroptimist, the Women's Division of the Chamber of Commerce, the Chamber of Commerce, doing all of these other good things, and then you spin off into to DAR?
Well, like Jean, I would not be one if it had not been for Ruth Blue.
I see.
But I have a relative who is Mary Wheeler Sanderson, and thank the Lord, she had already gotten her number and the history and her acceptance. So I didn't have a whole lot to do to get in, but there are these procedures that you have to follow about birth certificates and death certificates, and so from where she quit, I had to bring those forward. And even my mother said, "Why would you do this?" And I said, "Well, for your father."
Yes.
But my grandfather was a pioneer of the Watson community, and his father came and settled that area. And so for him and the love that he had for his family and his history and his name, I thought it was worthy for us to follow.
Yes.
And even I hope my children.
I was going to ask that very question. What about the future?
The future. They're in.
They're in.
They're in. And I hope that my grandchildren do. And I think that in time they would realize that also. They're proud of their heritage.
That's wonderful.
But it is great, and I've told you before how wonderful it is to have pioneers from my mother's side of the family as well as my father's who came from this area.
Yes, that's great.
So I visit relatives in the cemetery at Southland and Watson real often.
And you go out and have a big cemetery cleaning at Watson.
Every September.
Every September.
The second Saturday.
You're already ready for it.
Hot or cold, rain or shine.
And your big brother, or your little brother, Frank Robertson, I know has helped you stem wine, things like that, because he's very proud of Watson Cemetery also.
He is. We watch and see if they keep it mowed.
Yes, and he didn't get to be here today because he's not a member of the DAR.
No,
we're talking about girl stuff today,
That's girl
aren't we?
stuff.
Okay, and you were recently the chairman of something for the DAR that was very exciting to me, but I'd like for you to tell everyone about it.
Well, I'll be happy to do that. This was the first time that our chapter has ever done this. And it was awarded to a person. It was a community service award. And so that I won't miss anything, I'm going to read for sure how that person was selected. But they needed to demonstrate outstanding qualities in community service, which you know nothing about.
All right.
But it was specifically in the field of education, humanitarianism, patriotic, historical, citizenship endeavors, or environmental conservation. And we could have chosen this lady under any one of these sections, but the one that we chose happened to be outstanding in all of these particular areas.
That sounds suspicious.
Our first choice was our only person that was submitted, whose name was submitted. And that happened to be a lady that I don't even think you know, but her name's Ruthie Jackson.
That was such a surprise because I came to your meeting to install officers.
Well, that was kind of a little ruse we used to
We
get
just
you there.
wait.
You made me work very, very hard.
Well, you
It was
did a good
wonderful
job.
installation.
You did a good job.
It
Everybody
certainly
enjoyed
was.
it, and it was original and delightful. And we were thrilled to death. But way back there, when we were talking about this, we decided that that would be a way that we could surprise you and to honor you without your knowing about it, because you know everything that goes on. But anyway, the thing that I wanted to tell you was that for us to be able to get this, and it had to be submitted to the national chairman, that all of this had to be documented, everything.
Oh,
and
my.
it had to be letters of recommendation from people. And we hardly found anybody that would say anything nice.
We have only 6 minutes left on this.
Oh, I'm
so
sorry, just a second.
You better
We had
cut that
newspaper
down.
clippings, and we had to have some kind of written matter.
I see.
So we made a real nice little notebook for you that has all of this in it. But I would like to mention that we had a letter from the mayor.
Oh,
and
you did?
believe it or not, he does think you're great.
How wonderful.
He said it's a rare individual who is willing to place concern for the public good ahead of personal interests, and we know that you certainly do that. Ruthie is the epitome of community service. And like I've said so many times before, hardly ever do we find a city councilman who wears her high heels to the Woman's Club to a T, and then you find her on Tarrant Road picking up trash. But we do love you and appreciate you, Ruthie. And then the Keep Grand Prairie Beautiful chairman, Mr. Steve Adams, wrote, said, I'm pleased to nominate Ruthie for your Community Service Award. Her tireless dedication and hours of time spent volunteering her services to keep Grand Prairie beautiful and the city of Grand Prairie have earned her a place in our hearts and in our history.
How wonderful.
And then Mrs. Jana Emile Barker, who is the director of Brighter Tomorrows, excuse me, and also president of the Serotomists, says that Mrs. Jackson is the most innovative person I know and is always so willing to volunteer her services. Not only does she put her action to her ideas, but she freely supports our projects financially.
How wonderful.
And there were many, many other wonderful letters.
How wonderful. That's
And
great.
we were so thrilled that we could honor you in this way, because I don't know of anybody in this town who gives themselves more freely than you do.
Well, I was so excited when you got up and gave me a
beautiful,
wonderful certificate. I mean, framed.
Framed,
yeah.
Usually they'll just hand you a certificate and say, oh, and this is just absolutely gorgeous. It says the Daughters of the American Revolution, the National Society of the Daughters of the American Revolution, Certificate of Award presented to Ruthie Jackson for excellence in community service, May the 19th, 2001. And it's signed by B. Thomas, your regent, and also the national chairman of the NSDAR. And I bet I could sell that signature. Isn't that wonderful? Look, I do have my wonderful pen on. It came with this gorgeous pen, a lapel pen, and so.
Well, we're so happy to have the opportunity to present this so that the public can see it, because we were just in our small meeting and
a good lunch.
Yes, we did have a good lunch, but we wanted the city of Grand Prairie to know that we had presented this to you as our first recipient, and we hope that we can continue this, because there are a lot of worthy people here in Grand Prairie who have done great things, but you're just #1 on the list.
Oh, that is just
Jean
so.
and I were honored to be on the committee to get to do this, but we did not make the selection. It was a matter of the clubs.
Yeah, the
club did this.
Oh, yes, this was the club's selection.
In other words, I couldn't bribe just two of you to do all of this.
Not anymore.
Not anymore. Well, I want to thank you all for even wanting to do this publicly like that, because it was such a distinct honor, and you surprised me so that I almost couldn't find my way home that afternoon.
Oh, goodness.
But I need to, we have about 3 more minutes left on our show, so Joe, I want to thank you for chairing that committee.
Thank you.
And I hope you weren't prejudiced in the recommendations that
I'm
you
never
made.
prejudiced when it comes to you. Never.
Thank you. But I want to get back with Jean just a moment and find out a little bit more about how do you influence the younger people to become a member of the DAR? Now, I know all of you all are not ancient as I am, but you're getting on down the road a little bit, and do you have many young people?
Well, we have a few young people, but what we need to do is to start with children.
Yes.
And our chapter, Texas Bluebonnet chapter, and the Old Chisholm Trail chapter in Duncanville,
all right,
and the General Levi Casey chapter from Dallas, we sponsor a Children of the American Revolution Society. They meet over in Duncanville, but it is very active.
That's a good start.
It's a good start, and we have children from birth, practically they can belong, but they're very active, and we went over there to be honored as one of their sponsors at a meeting that was held, and I was amazed at how poised they are and how knowledgeable they are.
Do they have projects also?
Yes, they have projects, and they study American history, and they do things that will help them to know something about their heritage.
Are you allowed to do any of this in the public school? Since your organization and society, are you able to talk about it at school so that...
Yes. Now, Jean Rowe was one who often went into...
Greatest librarian that Grand Prairie has ever had, right?
Yes, and she would go in.
Schools.
She was what they called a museum, DAR museum docent or correspondent. And she would go to classes and present historical talks. We do have the help of the schools in sponsoring our American History Essay Contest each year for grades 5 through 8. Okay. And the last year we had something like 97 entries.
Good.
And when we had the presentation to the finalists and the winners at the library in February, we had almost 150 parents and children come.
How wonderful.
So that's why I'm saying we're going to have to find a bigger place to meet if it continues. But we do have the help of Judy Wilkinson, who's the
marvelous
the social studies. I know she's going to get me for not knowing the exact title, but she's
Director of Social Services.
of Social Studies, but she's been most helpful to me, and has found teachers that are willing to work with the students, because there are specific requirements for this essay, and it does take time out of their classroom.
We have half a minute left, and I'd like for you to look out into your camera, and if anyone's interested in the DAR, give them a magic telephone number or a post office box to write to you all so that you could follow up on it and see what's happening.
Well, I can't think of the phone number just right now for our registrar, but you could call me, Jane Peel, at 972-262-1272, and I'll be glad to direct you to our registrar, Clara Edwards.
That's wonderful. And Joe, would you like to give your telephone number in case anyone's chasing down the DAR? You would be helpful too.
I can tell them where to find somebody.
Good.
972-264-1609.
That's wonderful. I want to thank you all so much, both of you all, for taking the time to come and help us document very sparingly the DAR. I know we could have talked for an hour, and if we had some of your members that had been your charter members, they could tell us forever what to do. But this is Ruthie Jackson reminding you that history is as we live and do.